Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Unfortunately, or fortunately, a Second and Charles just opened about 5 minutes away from where I live, which is terrible for my wallet, but good for the growing book collection, I guess. So I've got a bunch of older books that I've never read before, that I picked up used at Second and Charles that I'm going to go through do reviews of. This one, Home After Dark by David Small, printed by Liverlight, a really good book. I really enjoyed it. I know I've read his previous book, Stitches, which, if I remember correct, was a memoir. This one starts to feel like a memoir at first, but it's obviously not. It's fiction. It may have some kind of emotional truth in it, but it's about a character named Russell. He grows up in Ohio, and his parents split, and his dad decides to take him to California. Small is a very like direct cartoonist. It reminds me a lot of Jules Pfeiffer. Just it feels like he's drawing straight to ink almost. Like there's not any kind of sketching going on underneath, or Jeff Lemire, somebody like that. So it has that really loose, like rough quality, but he'll pull off these really nice techniques too, where it shows that he really is a master of what he's doing, but it can seem quick and clumsy in the same way that Jules Pfeiffer can. It kind of has the efficient storytelling of like Will Eisner. These are all good comparisons to be making, I think. Things that any cartoonist should be happy to have that comparison made. He's also a really effective designer. He's usually pretty understated cartooning, but like this scene here where they're coming into California from the desert and coming up to the city, and then the kid from Ohio gets into California, and there's this big like cubist futurist montage collage looking like impression of coming into Southern California in the 1950s, 60s. I think that's a really effective image, kind of the overwhelming nature of it. So I think Small is really good at that. Like it never really feels like he labors over a drawing much, but they always say exactly what they need to say, and the characters are really fluid and expressive because of that. And I really appreciate that. Like at first glance, it can look kind of crude, but I think it's really pretty sophisticated. So him and his dad show up. Russell and his dad show up in California. Aunt won't let them live there, so they have to go to Northern California, which is kind of my neck of the woods. This is Northern California, so north of San Francisco, further up than I lived. But I really resonate with this, like this idea that they went there looking for the California dream, and the father's like, Christ, this could just be like anywhere USA. And that's always funny to me because everywhere that I've moved, people who haven't been to California are like, "Oh, you're from California, it must be so great." It's like, nah, I'm from Modesto, man. It's not that great. It's worse than most places, other places I've been. So I like that. I think that's a very accurate experience. When they get to Marshfield, their town that they're gonna live in, you start to get evidence of like a series of animal killings, and that's one of the subplots that runs throughout the book. Um, it's almost easy to ignore the subplots throughout the book because it's so much just kind of about like a childhood experience. I think it's still a pretty good representation of a childhood experience. It in that sense, it kind of reminds me of This One Summer by Julian Tamaki, or some of Bastien Vivez's stuff, where it's just kind of like a good representation, especially the Vivez stuff, where it's almost like plotless, or the plot's like flat. It doesn't have these peaks. There's kind of that sense throughout this book, but then the plot does like have these really interesting peaks and valleys, and it's balanced against the flatness in an interesting way. Like there's an animal murdering spree going on, and you have these shocking images of cats like this, but there's an overall blandness to it, which is interesting friction that Small uses throughout the book. Um, some of the characters are talking about Bakersfield, California, and one of his friends he makes, Warren, him and his grandma are thinking about going to Bakersfield, and they're like trying to get out of the small town to Bakersfield. And Russell says, Bakersfield, oh, that looks like Dolesville. And that's funny to me, too, because that's like, you know, all the stuff up and down 99, Fresno, Bakersfield, Modesto, Stockton. Like, I don't know. They're all just not desirable cities. We always had a joke about Bakersfield that, and I'm sure this joke is applied to other places, but it was always like, hey, did you know that the toothbrush was invented in Bakersfield? So, no, I didn't know that. Oh yeah, if it would have been invented anywhere else, it would have been called the teeth brush. So it's just this like 99 in California is just this series of like hick-ass farm towns that have gotten big. It's a strange place. So it's funny. He's right. It's Dolesville, but it's funny that they're in such a small place that they're wanting to go there. And this kid Warren winds up paying Russell to let Warren take his clothes off and just lay on top of him and hug him. So they have this like weird kind of child on child sexual abuse moment. And you think that's going to be like the major, okay, now I really understand where the story's going. But that's like another one of these like subplots that kind of overlap each other while the majority of the story remains pretty tame. And then from there, those things, yeah, they kind of just cycle around each other as Russell deals with life in this small town and just deals with boys being boys and that kind of stuff. Again, some really nice use of material and brush with the ink wash. So yeah, the rest of it, it's like a pretty straightforward drama, which I appreciate. I think I want more of that. It's a well done drama. There's some spots where I think if the exposition, the captions would have been taken away and it would have just been dialogue, I think it would have landed better and it would have felt less like memoir and more like just a straightforward story. But other than that, like, I think it's a pretty great book. The only other thing that I guess would be maybe weird about it for some people is it does, because it's like set in the 1950s and kids are riding around on bikes and like playing baseball. I could see this as like a childhood that just doesn't land with people anymore. I don't know if people in smaller towns still kind of have this type of childhood, but the idea of kids being out and playing in a drainage ditch and like playing ball, and I don't know, that just feels old to me. I think it has in the end a contemporary message, but some of that was just felt a little dated to me. But you know, that's fine. I think the overall impact of the story is still really, really it lands in an interesting way. And there is when you get to the end, like there's a real good ramp up in the plot that evenness is like kind of waiting for that, and I don't know that it necessarily needed that, but it helps to have another big peak towards the end. So yeah, I really like this. I'm gonna have to go back and find Stitches because I remember reading it and really enjoying it, but my memory of it's not that great. But I know I enjoyed it, and I know I enjoyed this, and I know I enjoy his really loose, free cartooning. So yeah, I would highly recommend this book if you haven't checked it out. I know it's not a new book, but it's definitely a good one. Thanks for following along. Take it away, Jack.
You want to see all these books? Smash that subscribe button and the like button and the bell, and then you get them.